everyone, welcome back to Black Moon Coven. So tonight I'm going to be showing you how to make a little protection sachet to carry with you on the go. I'm also going to be showing you how to sew it on the inside of a jacket to make it look completely inconspicuous. Now, why the hell would you want to sew a sachet on the inside of any garment or shoes or bag or whatever you want? That is because it's an old folk custom to sew something that you have made from herbs or different type of herbal correspondences to have it with you more permanently. So I like to really focus on protection, especially on the go. So we're going to be making a little protection sachet in this tutorial, but you can customize it to whatever you kind of want regarding your magic and what you want it to kind of emulate when you're on the go. So for this project, you're going to need some black felt. You're not going to need a lot of it, and you don't specifically have to use felt. So please don't go out to the store specifically to get the materials. Find something around your home. You can use an old sock. You can use an old t-shirt. It doesn't really matter as long as it's a square little piece of fabric. You're only going to be using like this much. So it doesn't really matter what the fabric is. I prefer felt because I'm a crafter. I have that shit lying all the way around. So I really like to use felt because it's really easy to sew with. You don't have to finish the edges. Plus, it's really easy to embroider on. So felt is really my go-to. Obviously, you're going to need some scissors, some needle and thread, and the herbal correspondences that I have chosen are specific for protection because that is what I want to focus on. However, you can use this tutorial and customize it to whatever you are focusing on at this particular moment. So I have chosen cedar, I have some thyme, I have some black salt, I have some anise stars, I have mint, and then I also have a little itty bitty acorn. So that is what basically is going to make up our protection sachet, and it's going to be very, very tiny, and we're going to be sewing it onto the inside of a jacket. Now, why specifically a jacket? Because it's going to be really, really cold out soon. Plus, when I have my hands in my pockets, I like to fidget with things, and it's really good for people with anxiety, like myself, where I'm out in public. I like to kind of fidget with things in my pocket. So that's why I kind of either have a crystal on me or something in my pocket that I can hold and fidget with, and it'll make me more calm. It'll kind of relax my mind a little bit more. So I like the use of protection sachets, but sometimes it can crowd up your pockets, it can bulge out of your pocket. It'll not make it as conspicuous. It can fall out of your pocket. So that is why I like the technique of kind of sewing it inside of your pocket, because it'll make it inconspicuous, and I'm going to be showing you how to make it look like there's nothing there. So you're going to learn a little bit of sewing skills along the way. So without further ado, let us get right into the tutorial. Okay, so the very first thing you're going to want to do is determine the size of your spell sachet. Now, given the amount of space that you have in your garment, which you're going to sew it in, that is going to determine the size of the spell sachet needs to be. However, if you are not sewing it into a particular garment, then you can make it as big or small as you want. So other than that, you're going to need a needle and then some thread. Now, I'm going to be using this big, thick embroidery thread just because I want you to see the stitches and I want you to see what I'm doing. You don't have to use this particular thread. You can use black. You can use a color that kind of corresponds to what you are doing. You could use a really thin thread, or they even have invisible thread. So if you don't want to even pick a color, you can use that as well. So just note that I am just doing this just to show you the different stitches and what we are going to be doing. Also, blessing candle. It's nice to have a candle going, especially if you are working on a spell sachet or any type of charm. This is just a regular candle that I have kind of anointed with some blessing oil, and then here I have a sigil of manifestation. And this kind of adds power into my work. It kind of helps bless the work as we go along, and I'm going to be showing you how I like to enchant it later on. So what you're going to want to do first is grab your thread, and if you have never sewn before, it's okay. We're going to go through it step by step. It's actually not as difficult as people make it seem. Just have a lot of patience in yourself. you're going to be fine. It's really just a little tiny sachet, and we're going to be doing really, really basic stitches. So what you're going to want to do is take your thread and put the ends together. Basically, you're going to take your needle, and like you're threading a necklace, so you're going to want the needle to hang down. You're going to take your needle and you're going to just pull it through the thread until it is hanging like a necklace or like a pendulum. Then you're going to take the ends and you're going to knot them. I really like to use numerology whenever I do a type of spell sachet or any type of charm. So I like to use the number 3 or 9, and in this case I'm going to use 3. So we're going to knot it up 3 times. Okay, that should produce a nice strong knot, and then we're going to cut the excess thread off, and that is kind of what it should look like right there. So now you have your needle and it's perfectly threaded. Next thing you're going to want to do is take your spell sachet, and what you're going to want to do is poke your needle right through just to begin and pull the thread all the way through. Now, there's a couple of different stitches that we can do. There's a really basic stitch where you just pull the needle and you just keep going this way. And this is just a running stitch. You're basically just pulling the needle and it's going to create these kind of teeth right here. There is also another stitch, so I'm just going to finish this side just to show you how that looks like. I really like sewing with embroidery thread as well because it gives you a nice thick border. A lot of the times where you sew with sewing machine thread or just regular thread, it kind of gives you, the thread kind of disappears within the fabric depending on what you are doing. So I like embroidery thread because it gives you a nice border, plus it's really, really secure. So that is how it's going to look like if you do a running stitch. It's going to just be a bunch of little teeth. The next stitch that I personally like to use, I don't really know the proper term for it, but I call it a ladder stitch because it starts to look like a ladder. So what you do is you poke your needle right through, take your thread and wrap it around. So again, you're going to poke your needle right through, take your thread and wrap it around. And you're going to wrap it around the same way the needle is sewing in. So if you do that, and if you notice that now you have little teeth and then an edge running all the way along your protection sachet. So you have a nice little edge here. And the reason why I like to do this particular stitch, it's because it holds the herbs inside, so it's kind of really helpful. So here are the 2 different stitches that we have done, and that's kind of what it looks like right now. So we're just going to finish up the protection sachet. Make sure you leave one side of the sachet open, so of course we can put our herbs into it. Okay, so we are done, and that's kind of what it looks like. Now it has a little bit of a pocket, so it's literally a little pocket that you have sewn. I like to keep the thread and the needle just threaded, just like that. And now we are going to move on to the next step, which is taking our herbs, enchanting them, and then putting them into the sachet. So I like to grind them up a little bit and then mix them with my hands because I feel like that kind of helps me at least to put my intention within the herbs. So we're going to take a little bit of time, a little bit of cedar. You don't have to put too much because depending on the size of your sachet, you are only going to be fitting in a small amount. Some mint. Mint is one of my favorite protection herbs, by the way. Some anise star. And just use a small piece because obviously my protection sachet isn't huge. So I'm just going to use a couple of small pieces. Some black salt. You don't need a bunch of this stuff, just a little sprinkle will do. And we're going to leave our acorn for last. So what you're going to do is take your mortar and pestle and kind of start grinding up all the herbs together. And while you are doing this, just visualize protection. And I like to kind of picture my own protection seal within my mind. So I'm kind of tracing it now as I'm grinding it. I think I have mentioned before that I really like this mortar and pestle. It's a stone one and it's served me greatly. So if you're going to put money into a mortar and pestle, definitely buy yourself a stone one. It works really great. So now we have the herbs. And what I'm going to do is take my hands and kind of run them through my hands. And then just enchant them and think about the protection seal or any incantation that you have or anything else that you like to do when you think about protection. If you want to think about castle walls or just really heavy stone or being surrounded by candles, anything that gives you comfort and protection, you can totally picture it at this moment. Pieces of paper, really great for this point because you're going to take your herbs, you're going to spill them onto the paper. This will give you a little bit of an area to work with. Then you're going to take your protection sachet, open it up nice and wide, and you're going to put the herbs on the inside. Then you're going to finish it off with putting the acorn on the inside. And now we're going to finish the whole sewing. You're going to seal it off. So you're going to take your needle again and you're going to just finish off your protection sachet. And again, you can do any stitch that you want. I'm using my ladder stitch again, just because I personally love the look that it gives and loves the security that it gives as well. To finish off your protection sachet, because obviously you can't have a needle and thread dangling from your protection sachet, you're going to want to poke your needle through, just like with any other stitch. Take your thread and wrap it around a couple of times and pull the needle through. This will give it a little bit of a knot. So pull it all the way through and make sure it's nice and secure. Then you just cut off the excess. Make sure you don't cut it off too close because it'll unravel if you do. And here you go. Here is your protection sachet. So now we are going to take this little sachet and we're going to enchant it further. So here I have some rosemary incense, and I'm going to take it with the blessing candle. And we are just going to fumigate it further and think about protection and what that means to you and how can you visualize protection. So if you have a chant or an incantation, this is the time to say it. So we are just enchanting the protection sachet further. Then what I also like to do is hold it over the flame of the blessing candle, because that will further bless your intentions. Now, please don't drop it into the blessing candle. You can also blow it out and then have the smoke kind of fumigate it as well. So now we are done with the protection sachet. Now I'm going to show you how to sew it into an actual garment. So I have this old jacket here, and there's a couple of different places where you can actually sew the protection sachet into. You can sew it onto the inside lining of your jacket. You can sew it onto the inside pocket of your jacket. You can sew it onto the inside sleeve of your jacket. There's many different places that you can do it too. My ultimate favorite place is the sleeve, just because whenever I feel like I need to kind of draw on the sachet's power, I can pull down my sleeve and essentially just hold it into my hand. So what you're going to do is open up your sleeve as most as possible. So I have this really nice button here so I could open it up. Now, sleeves, coats, anything really are sewn with two different pieces of fabric. So if you kind of run your fingers around it, you could see that it's two different pieces of fabric sewn together. What we are going to be attempting is a blind stitch. So what happens is you're going to sew the protection sachet on the inside of the sleeve, and it's not going to be seen on the outside. And it's not that difficult. It sounds difficult, but it's not. It'll take some patience if you're completely new to sewing. So don't worry, we're gonna go through every step just like we did before. So just like you did before, you are going to take your thread and you're going to thread it onto your needle. So once you have it threaded and knotted at the end, we are going to begin. So you're going to take your sleeve, open it up all the way, and make sure that there's two pieces basically at the cuff of the sleeve, which I assure you there will be. Any jacket or anything else is built with a lining, and especially on the cuff, it's usually folded and then sewn onto itself. So it makes it like the perfect opportunity to sew things into your jacket. So you're going to take it and you're going to just put it down onto the sleeve. You're going to kind of want to make sure that how you wear your jacket, where your hand falls. So kind of put it on and then kind of mark where you need to sew your protection sachet. So you're going to take your sachet and you're going to take your needle. Now, let me get closer here. Now, here is the kind of difficult part, but don't worry, just be extra patient. You're going to take your needle, you're going to stab it through your protection sachet, and then you're going to just lightly, just grabbing the first fabric, not the second, not the outer one, just the first part. So just pull it in just a little bit slightly, and then pull it through. And you're going to do that for the rest of the protection sachet. So again, just slightly, because if you go in too deep, you're going to see the stitches on the outside, and you don't want that. You don't want anyone to see your protection sachet or an outline of that sachet. So something that I like to do that kind of helps with this is you fold the fabric over just like that, and it creates kind of a better grip, so then you can just sew along. Now I'm not using my typical ladder stitch for this point because it's just going to be a lot easier to sew it with a nice running stitch. So make sure you don't go too far, too deep, and you're going to be able to tell because it's going to be a lot of fabric kind of coming through. So you're just going to do that the whole entire time, all the way around. So again, poke your needle through your protection sachet and just barely through the top layer of the cuff fabric. Okay, to close off your stitches, what you're going to do is do 3 knots. So you're going to pull your needle right through and do 3 knots. Like I said before, I like to do multiple series of knots, especially if I'm doing something magical, and 3 is just a really good magical number. Okay, and then what you're going to want to do is just cut off the excess and then inspect your work. So as you can see, protection sachet on the inside of the sleeve, nothing on the outside. So now when you wear your jacket, no one's gonna know that there is a protection sachet on the inside. And especially if you grab a fabric that kind of matches your jacket and then match the thread color, no one will even know it's there. So it's really, really good for broom closet witches as well, because it's really kind of incognito type of witchcraft. So it's really hidden, and it's very nice just to have with you at all times. Now this is not permanent. Obviously you can take the stitches out and remove it whenever you want and put another one in there. But hopefully everyone enjoyed my little tutorial. I had a lot of fun doing this. And there you go. So follow me on all of my social media down below. And until next time, have a lovely rest of your evening.